Welcome, everybody. We're back for another episode of Ag Marketing IQ in Depth. And we welcome back Arlan Suderman, our first repeat guest, and always someone that our audience wants to hear from. So, how are you doing today, Arlan?
Doing very well. Thank you, Pam. It's good to be back here with you.
We're delighted, even though we're still not in a period where we're going to have wonderful things to say about the market. Do you want to start off by giving us a high overview?
Well, about a year ago, I started warning our customers we're going into that phase of the ag cycle where we really need to be defensive in our marketing. We've had several years where we've been able to build the equity into farms, and now the focus needs to be on not can I get the highest price, but can I make sure and protect the equity that I've developed? That means that we're a little quicker to develop defense mechanisms in the markets. In other words, know what our break-even costs are, and if the market's offering it, take it, even if it's at a time when you're not typically do some marketing, maybe advanced marketing, using tools that maybe you haven't used before, learning about them, etc. Be more defensive in marketing and just be willing to accept prices that help minimize your losses and help protect the equity you built. But at the same time, have some flexibility so that if we get an unforeseen rally, we can take advantage of it as well. But it's mainly about protecting what we've built. We will get through this. We will have better days, but a lot of times these cycles can last a while, so we need to make sure that we're protecting it.
Absolutely. So you mentioned minimizing losses. Is there a chance to hit that break even for some of our farmers? Every farm has different practices. Everybody's costs are different, but can they at least break even?
Well, some farms will be able to, others will not be able to. And like you said, every farm is different. They're in a different situation. How leveraged are they? How much operating notes do they carry? How much are they operating on a cash basis? Their inputs and where they're sitting at, the region of the country certainly does impact basis available for the grains that they sell. Mm-hmm. So then in that case where you can't hit the break even, sometimes there's profit, and maybe that's not the right word, there's benefit in simply reducing your losses. And so we need to look at that as well. There are some tools out there that are available, developed on the over-the-counter markets that grain buyers can offer in some cases that allow some flexibility that if you sell at this price and the market goes up afterwards, you can benefit from that. Talk to them ahead of time. Talk to your input suppliers about what they can do as flexibility for the next year as well. Be in discussions with them. Be talking to them. That talking is always better than not talking, and look at what your options are with the overall mode being, how can I make sure I'm still in business a year from now?
Absolutely. And we know that's something that weighs on our farmers because they not only want to be in business next year, they want their next generation to come on and keep that farm going. So looking Absolutely. At that, I know a lot of farmers are considering using storage. Is there an opportunity there? Do you think we're going to see some higher prices still? Let's see, we're almost at the end of this marketing year, moving into new crop. What are the chances?
Well, it depends if you have a disciplined approach on the storage. On-farm storage can work very well for you. Usually commercial storage starts running into enough costs of paying them that you start running into problems there. So you got to be careful. On-farm storage is a little bit different situation. Now, you need to know you still do have some costs for it. You still have to protect that grain. You still have your interest costs. The interest costs are higher than what they were a few years ago. Need to guard against that. But there's two things that we're trying to capture when we use on-farm storage. First of all, basis at harvest time tends to be very weak. And so if we can put it on on-farm storage and see that improvement in basis, that can help cover some of the costs and give us some benefit and a return on our money when we do that. The other is the carry in the market. What do I mean by carry in the market? That's when the market is so flooded with supply that the deferred futures contracts will trade at a premium to the nearby contract, trying to offer a premium if you store for delivery later. It's saying, don't deliver now, deliver later. But you have to be able to capture that, and you can do that with a storage hedge. Sometimes there are over-the-counter products that can do that for you as well. But being able to capture both the gains in basis, the anticipated gains in basis, knowing that there are no guarantees, but there are historical patterns, and then capture that premium that's in those deferred contracts. A lot of people think because there's a premium in the deferred contracts, that means that that's a bullish sign that the price is going to be going up. But it's actually a sign of oversupply. And as the nearby contract expires, then those deferred contracts ratchet down to you. And so if you have a storage hedge in place on those deferred futures contracts, as it ratchets down, it pays money into the account on that against your grain, and helps you capture some of that storage premium from the futures market in that case as well.
And that's what, when we're looking at that in storage, some elevators aren't going to be accepting grain. Some off-farm storage isn't going to be available. I've heard folks saying, get your ducks in order before harvest. And we're getting really close. Do farmers still have time to do that? What's going to happen if they don't have storage and they don't have any place to take their grain?
Yeah, exactly right. So again, be in discussions now with them. And that brings up another topic, that's deferred pricing contracts. Those are extremely popular out across the Midwest, where a grain buyer may say, bring me your grain, and for a price, you can go ahead and move the grain. That allows them to move it on out as well. And then you can determine the price later. Tell us later, okay, today's price, whatever you're offering today, that's what we'll take. And that sounds very attractive because you think, okay, if the price goes up, basis improves, I can tell them a month from now or 2 months from now or 3 months from now, depending on the contract, okay, today's the day I want to take that price. But from a grain buyer standpoint, there's a lot of advantages. For the farmer, there's very limited advantages to that. And one of the disadvantages is if that grain facility would happen to go bankrupt during that time, you have very limited protections during that time, and you may be out your grain and your money. The second factor to keep in mind is if everybody is turning their grain over to the grain buyer in that situation, the grain buyer never has any reason to rally basis or to rally the market at a later date in order to try to encourage you to sell. And so it can really help hold prices lower for a lot longer. And so I'm not a big fan of deferred pricing contracts, even though they are very popular in farm country. They're popular for a reason. They're very good for the grain buying companies. They're not so good for the farmer in most cases.
So that makes me think, who has the grain, who has the power? Like, who has the money has the power, right?
To a great extent, that's true, yes.
Essentially, the grain is the money. So the other thing I was thinking about when you're speaking to that is protecting your floor. There's always a chance, even though, good Lord, we hope not. And I know there's some thought that we have, hit our low, but that prices could go lower. So
certainly so. And that goes back to what I said earlier about being defensive in a marketing. People ask me, well, surely corn can't go lower, right? And I say, remember when crude oil traded for negative $42 a barrel? Now, I'm not forecasting negative corn prices here by any means, but in this day of algo computers that drive the markets and the billions of dollars behind them, anything is possible. So if your farm cannot afford the risk of it going lower, then you need to take steps to protect yourself. And maybe say, well, I think it's going to hold, but what's your plan B? Have a line in the sand. If it crosses that line in the sand, if it crosses below a certain price, then I'm going to take action, and this is the action I'm going to take.
That makes sense. And when you speak to that, looking at these low prices, a lot of folks are thinking that USDA's yield numbers have a lot to do with that. And they question the wisdom of those numbers, and they question how they arrived at those numbers. But it turns out they could have some very good thinkers in their corner, because StoneX had some numbers similar. Do you want to talk about how we might have arrived at that yield number, Arlan?
Yeah, I took a lot of heat on social media back in July when I said, basically, I'm going to show you my yield model. And the reason I'm going to show it to you is not saying this is what the final yield is going to be. There's a lot of growing season left. It'll change. But I want you to know what the funds are trading, because you're wondering why prices are going down. It's because these major funds, they all have their yield models. They've built them. They've spent money on them. When you have billions of dollars at stake, you don't mind spending money to build a yield model based on weather factors, growing conditions, satellite data, et cetera, projecting yields. And so I'm showing you my yield model so you get an example of what the market is trading right now. And it was showing 187 bushel yield at the time. And I said, these funds have yield models. I've seen some of them. Some of them are even higher than what mine is. That's why the market is going down. That's what the market's trading. And it will do that whether USDA comes out with a yield in August or not, because that's the data that they're trading. And so then at the 1st of August, we did our customer survey, which we do every year, 1st of August, 1st September, the 1st of October, and 1st of November, where we collect thousands of data points from across the Midwest from our customers who have agronomists who are in the field, who are talking to farmers who are in the field, who live and they have many different locations around the Midwest. So they're collecting data points from all those locations, so thousands of data points. And we say, based on what you know now, what is the potential of this crop? What do you think it'll yield this year based on what you currently see?
Right.
And they told us 188.1 bushels per acre. And that was 1st of August. USDA conducted their survey of farmers basically on August 1st. They also looked at crop ratings, which are basically the 9th highest for this time of year on record, and satellite data, which was the highest on record for this time of year. Put that all together, and they came up with 188.8. Our soybean yield is 53.6. That's what USDA came up with as well. Does that mean what it's going to be in September or October? No, but in early August, that's what the crop looked like. Hadn't we not done our survey, had USDA not done its and had not reported, these funds would still have their yield models and the market would still be doing what it's doing.
It's the data they trust.
Yeah, exactly right, because they have a lot at stake as well. And so they're going to trade what they think the size of the crop is. They're the big drivers of the market. And so we're simply trying to provide the farmer out there with the same type of information so that he can take the steps necessary. And probably one of the most rewarding things that I've heard this summer was when a farmer reached out to me on social media, says, I've never met you, I don't know you, but I've been following you on X, formerly Twitter. And when you put your yield model out there, I took defensive strategies. I implemented defensive strategies and put on price protection with my grains, and it has really paid off for me. Thank you.
That's phenomenal. That's the best any of us can do, is help a farmer make more money.
Or reduce what they might lose from a situation.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's the qualifier we have to put on every marketing conversation we have this year, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And the markets do go in cycles. If you look at the cycles, we tend to get a bull market type of cycle about every 10 years. In between those 10 years, you can have ups and down times. You can have just really down times. It varies quite a bit from cycle to cycle. But the bull markets tend to come every 10 years. Well, if that happens, we've got a few more years to go before we hit that bull market. So we really need to focus on survival mechanisms now to make sure that we're in good position when that next bull market comes.
Absolutely. And we thank you for helping our audience to find some ways to maybe get that done, Arlan. Appreciate the work that you do for farmers, and delighted to have you back at Ag Marketing IQ in Depth again.
My pleasure, Pam.